but in Luke you have this story of a woman who, it says, was bound with a spirit of infirmity, and she was bent over, and she couldn't lift up her head, right? For 18 years. 18 years going around like this. 18 years. It's a long time to be looking for nickels, right? It's just walking around like that, right? But it says specifically of her that she was a daughter of Abraham. And that's the reason why we read this gospel this day, the third Sunday before Christmas. Next Sunday is the Sunday of the forefathers of Christ. And then the Sunday after that, the Sunday before Christmas, is the Sunday of the genealogy. So on this Sunday, every year on this Sunday, 3 Sundays before Christmas, we read this story about the daughter of Abraham who had a spirit of infirmity and was bowed over for 18 years. St. Ambrose of Milan says that the 18 is significant. In the original Greek, it's 8 and 10 years. So they don't say 18, they have to say it in a funny way, right? 8 and 10. And so he said, well, the 10 represents the 10 commandments, and the 8 represents the 8th day of the resurrection. Okay, maybe it does, but I don't get it, which is fine. I don't get a lot of things. I just think when it says 18 years, it means a real long time. A real long time. And we read this because something happens when Christ comes. Some of you may get the Word magazine. It's sort of the official magazine of the Archdiocese. If you don't get it and you want to get it, I can get you on the mailing list and you'll get it for free. Since Metropolitan Joseph took over the Archdiocese, the quality of the articles, I think, has really increased. The much better articles. And the lead article this month asks the question, am I any better prepared for the coming of Christ than Israel was? As we're in this season of preparing for the coming of Christ, am I any better prepared for the Nativity, for the coming of Christ, than Israel was? And we think about that because this story, the woman walking around like this for 18 years. And of course, Jesus comes and touches her and heals her. Jesus has come to us. But how often am I still walking around like this? Maybe not physically, well, certainly not physically. But where is my gaze? What am I paying attention to? Am I paying attention to, well, when you're bent over, I can see myself and the ground, but I can't really see anybody else. And I think part of preparing for the coming of Christ has to do with letting our gaze go up so that we can see one another. I really like the tradition of giving gifts at Christmas. And I'll tell you why. I have a theological reason for it. I mean, okay, the 3 wise men and they brought gifts to Christ, and that's good. But for me, it gives me an excuse to break free from selfishness. and think about what would be a blessing for someone else. What would be a blessing for this person? Now, we can't give gifts to everybody in the world, but starting with our family, right? Starting with the people closest. Just spend a few weeks before Christmas thinking, what would be a blessing for this person? What would be a blessing? It's a way of getting our gaze off ourselves, off the ground, and thinking about others. Thinking, how can I bless someone else? How can I be an encouragement to someone else? I want to end with this kind of funny bit to it, because when the Pharisee said, "Oh, you're healing on the wrong day," Jesus says to him, "You hypocrite," right? How many of you don't, on the Sabbath day, take your donkey or your ox that's tied to the manger where you feed it and take it over to where the water is to get some water, right? And how much more this daughter of Abraham? I was reading St. Gregory Palamas's homily on this morning. I got up early and was reading. And so I read his homily on this Sunday. And I got this thought. I wonder how much money we spend on pets. And Google has an answer for everything. I just typed it into my computer. How much money is spent on pets? So in the United States, the American Association of Pet Products, or something like that, some organization that actually studies these things, said that last year in the United States, $60 billion was spent on pet supplies. And I was thinking about Christmas. And I was thinking about how we're called to stand up straight and look at one another. When I'm bent over like this, I can see my dog and my cat. And certainly the message of the story is not ignore your ox and your donkey, right? It's not ignore the animals. But it's look at what's most important, right? And if your heart goes out to your little cat or your little dog, good. It's a start. But that is how we can love one another, right? And I think that's part of how we prepare for the coming of Christ. We prepare for Christmas by looking at one another and in thinking about how we can be a blessing to those around us. And I think in that way we can best, or that's one of the good ways we can prepare for the coming of Christ and Christmas. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.